Hi, I'm actor Ian Champion, and welcome to History of Horror Cinema, my personal podcast tour of the good, bad, and the ugly of horror movie history. If you like what you hear, please don't forget to hit subscribe. The Ghost of St. Michael's, 1941. Another immensely popular film comedian during the Second World War in Britain was Will Hay, whose movie comedy output touched on a horror-tinged comedy with The Ghost of St. Michael's. From the mid-1930s until 1943, Hay's run of movies were a firm favorite with audiences, embroidering upon his fully realized schoolmaster character from the celebrated Fourth Form at St. Michael's sketches that he toured with great success internationally. The persona he adopted was an irritable, conniving figure of self-importance, his disdainful sniff covering up a woeful incompetence that was easily undermined in his best films by his much-loved supporting actors, Moore Marriott and Graham Moffat. In real life, William Thompson Hay, born in Stockton-on-Tees, could not have been more different to his doltish educator. The son of an engineer, he was a prodigiously gifted student, excelling in all subjects. Throughout his life, including fields as varied as astronomy and flying, he demonstrated a remarkable talent for talents, a true polymath who mastered any interest that engaged him. Initially, Will followed his father into becoming an apprentice engineer, but after marrying his childhood sweetheart Gladys in 1907, a night out seeing W.C. Field's juggling act in Manchester set his heart on becoming an actor. His first break came through working for Chaplin and Laurel's mentor Fred Karno, whose sketch comedy influence shaped his creation of the schoolmaster. The character was inspired by his sister, who was herself a teacher, and would have the family roaring with laughter at her true stories of the boy's antics. His original incarnation of the role was in drag, before opting to play it as a man. The supporting role of an old man, Harbottle in the films, didn't appear for some time, and was based on an elderly, deaf stage manager. In early stage performances, his wife Gladys Hay played a schoolboy, and under a convincing make-up, even the old man. The schoolmaster sketches bear some resemblance to the circular pun burlesque routines of Abbott and Costello. For example, what is a unit of electricity? A watt. A unit of electricity. A unit of electricity is a watt. Well, that's what I'm asking you. One of Will's most enduring passions was for astronomy. He bought a telescope at 15, and many of his closest friends were eminent scientists and astronomers. In BBC Radio 4's documentary Will Hay, Master of Comedy in 1976, Sir Patrick Moore praised Hay's book Through My Telescope as a very good general description of astronomy. In August 1933, he is credited with discovering a white spot on Saturn, and his telescope adaptation for studying comets is still used today. Hay had been disparaging about the cinema in his early life. His first films for Elstree Studios didn't catch on, and it wasn't until he transferred himself to Gainsborough Pictures and his school-teacher sketch persona to celluloid that he struck gold in Boys Will Be Boys in 1935. Although his dabbling in a comedy-horror hybrid was yet to happen, it was at this studio that he started fruitful collaborations with two future horror genre notables, writer and later Quatermass Helmer Val Guest and director William Bodine. Guest came to write for Gainsborough as an ex-actor-cum-film reviewer for The Hollywood Reporter, who, after criticizing director Marcel Varnell's work, was challenged by him to do better. He did well enough for both men to continue together, thus benefiting Hay with Oh, Mr. Porter in 1937 and Ask a Policeman 2 years later. Bodine had already directed Will twice for other studios, yet Boys Will Be Boys opened a string of 4 Gainsborough hits for their partnership. Sadly, though Bodine made at least 350 films, he earned the waggish nickname One Take for his less-than-perfectionist shooting style. With real horror dive bombers like Bela Lugosi's The Ape Man in 1943 and the following year's Voodoo Man, shot in just 7 days. We will meet him again in the rowdy company of the Bowery Boys. The most visibly successful team-up, making hay as it were, was with Graham Moffat and Moore Marriott, whose respective young and old employees endlessly pricked his pompous bubble. Their combative chemistry with their boss was a winning combination. However, echoing Tony Hancock's future self-sabotage, Hay's ego could not accept that their great support was a vital part of his box office formula. Only George Formby could beat his popularity around 1940. Whilst Moore Marriott carried on as Old Harbottle in Arthur Askey movies, over at Ealing Studios, now Will Hay drafted in Claude Hulbert as his new wingman for The Ghost of St. Michael's in 1941. While it might suggest a departure for Hay in experimenting with spook-fueled chuckles, this has much more in common with Ealing's gentle comedies, and Hay's established schoolmaster ones, being bereft of any ghosts or chills at all. Hay plays Mr. Lamb, the new teacher at the commandeered St. Michael's School, Dunbayne Castle, on Scotland's Isle of Skye. They may seem safe from Germany's aerial bombing, but Lamb isn't, from the campaign of schoolboy practical joking begun as soon as he sits on the crossing boat. The ringleader is future Carry-On Company man Charles Hawtrey, who was by now very much a mid-20s man, having already played similar teen terrors in Hay's Boys Will Be Boys in 1935, Good Morning Boys 1937, and Where's That Fire 3 years later. Hawtrey is Thorn, an apt name for one very much in Lamb's side to begin with, forcing him to trudge the 8 miles to the castle. Lamb arrives to be immediately greeted by Jamie the janitor, Dad's Army's famous doombringer John Lorry. Before Lamb can even unpack his case, the Caledonian Cassandra warns him of the legend of the McKinnons, whose family head committed suicide 800 years before, when his bride-to-be perished while traversing the loch. Lamb dismisses Jamie's story and the supposed phantom bagpipes foretelling an imminent death within the walls. The boys in his charge aren't Lamb's only obstacles to an easy time. The headmaster is the imperious Felix Aylmer, and fellow teacher Humphreys, the Ghost Train's Raymond Huntley, threatens to unmask Lamb's fudged credentials from their shared former school. Lamb does at least make a fast friend in Claude Hulbert's Hilary Tisdale, the old Etonian games teacher, an affable upper-class good egg. Lamb goes to the slaughter in his first scene as teacher, allowing Hay to slot with ease back into the besieged schoolteacher pomposity that made his name since the 1920s. He attempts to blag his lack of educational knowledge before his pupils, while they subvert and expose him with entertaining backtalk. "Suppose you tell us how much science you know." They get the better of him that night as well, by persuading him into drunkenness instead of reprimanding them for a midnight dorm feast. Suddenly, the sound of supernatural bagpipes cuts through the Billy Bunter machinations. And the headmaster is found dead in the great bedchamber he occupied of the accursed old McKinnon. At this halfway point, the tone switches more to murder mystery intrigue, as Hay, Hawtrey, and Hulbert become an amateur sleuth team, led by Thorne's pulp novel-fueled boffinry. The contents of an apparent suicide note left by the head vaporize due to being written in invisible ink. The threesome suspect Humphreys, but the evidence must be played out officially in court. This is a cue for a tonal shift back into comfortable Ealing eccentricity, when tradition demands that a makeshift courtroom be staged in a local farmer's barn. Proceedings are farcically undertaken amidst horses, ducks, and pigs, with Lamb giving his testimony holding a piglet. He is not above trying his luck in adding some verbal bamboozlement of the prosecution. "Listen, if you're trying to say that I wouldn't have said what I said I'd say if you'd said what you said you would have said." Despite Tisdale overplaying his hand as character witness by claiming Lamb invented Einstein's theory of relativity, the verdict is murder by persons unknown. One peculiar yet welcome gag comes courtesy of Tisdale being offered the almost literally poisoned chalice of the new headmastership. There's a chuckle to be had as he rehearses the maiden speech he'd present to the boys. He turns to the camera and asks us, "I'll give you 3 guesses as to who I am." Lamb is not out of the woods of jeopardy yet. He and his friend stumble upon a plot by Elliot Mason's Mrs. Wigmore to use the battlements for signaling in German submarine spies. Before they can connect the dots to her, though, the trio are almost squashed by a spiked ceiling in a tense sequence that makes up somewhat for the total lack of ghoulish thrills elsewhere. As I've said, The Ghost of St. Michael's belies its title, yet squeaks by as a pleasant, rainy Sunday afternoon's worth of family entertainment. The playing is energetic by the principal three, and director Marcel Varnell keeps it moving ably enough. Hay was supported again by Hawtrey as a Hitler Youth student in the Nazi doubling The Goose Steps Out in 1942, and with Claude Hulbert in the legal comedy My Learned Friend in 1943. We shall cross paths again with Hawtrey in the future in the much more horror-centric spoof Carry On Screaming. Thanks for listening. If you like what you hear, please don't forget to hit subscribe.